two giveaways really were the difference there in that first half, because I thought we were doing some really good things. But then we got that takeaway, had a takeaway negated by an offside.
Dillon Gabriel was not better than Shedeur Sanders in minicamp when the rookies was there. He was not better at minicamp or training camp when the veterans was there. He did not perform better than him during the game he was in. And it's time out for people with the cap.
But I do view him as somebody who could position himself to be that QB2. And if he's not in that position, but he's playing well, we know that the reason that would be the case is because they don't want people clamoring for Shedeur Sanders prematurely.
Kevin Stefanski has finally reached his limit, and it's now blatantly clear he's no longer convinced Dillon Gabriel is the answer. After yet another disappointing showing, Stfansky openly admitted that Gabriel's performance simply wasn't good enough. He even took it a step further, calling Dillon's decisions some of the worst calls we made all night, especially during that disastrous second quarter. These weren't minor mistakes. These were drive-ending, momentum-killing errors that left fans visibly frustrated and even shook his own teammates. This moment feels like a real turning point, because when a head coach publicly calls out his quarterback like that, you know the situation has become urgent, and change is finally on the way.
Very good so far. And this one is picked off and going back the other way. The Eagles, Andrew Makuba. A pick six the other way.
After watching this game play out, it became painfully clear why Shedeur Sanders is the better choice. Dillon Gabriel struggled from beginning to end. No touchdowns, no big completions, and countless wasted opportunities, even with the full support of the first-team defense in front of him. His errors didn't just pause drives, they completely shifted momentum to the opposing team, and instead of owning that, Gabriel walked around like he was in control, even disrespecting Shedeur by calling him an entertainer instead of a real competitor. That kind of arrogance, especially after such a poor showing, raises serious doubts about his mindset and whether he deserves to lead this team at all. G. Bush didn't hold back either. He called Gabriel's comments not just unnecessary, but flat out reckless. For a QB who was hyped up as having Skynet-level processing, superhuman read and react composure, and the coolness of a machine, Gabriel's behavior didn't match any of that. Instead of proving himself on the field against real competition, he turned his attention to taking cheap shots at Shedeur Sanders, and in doing so, he managed to trigger one of the most loyal and energized fan bases in the entire NFL.
When it comes to being a supercomputer, he was only second to Skynet in the Terminator series. He is now capable of sending Terminators backwards and forward through time, waging a war with the Shedeur Sanders fans.
But here's the real issue. This entire mess leads straight back to Kevin Stefanski. From the beginning of training camp, he's treated Shedeur Sanders unfairly. Even when Sanders showed clear flashes of talent, Stfansky wouldn't give him any first-team reps, keeping him sidelined while others got opportunities. And after that first preseason performance, when fans were hyped about Shedeur's potential, Stfansky doubled down instead of adapting. He made it very clear Sanders still wouldn't get playing time, insisting his focus was on developing everyone, but the way he said it felt like nothing more than an excuse to keep Sanders buried on the depth chart. That's where the real controversy began, and it all started with Stefanski's own words. Let's roll exactly what he had to say.
Yeah, pleased with Shedeur, pleased with the offense. Again, not perfect, plenty that we can work on, but I thought the guys did a really nice job of Shedeur and operating, the guys making plays. So, again, a ton to teach off of.
And if Stefanski's earlier comments weren't already turning heads, the latest reports have pushed the controversy even further. Word is, Stfansky isn't even factoring Shedeur Sanders into the plan going forward. For fans, this was shocking. After all the hype, all the flashes of potential, and the spark Shedeur has brought to the team, Stefanski still doesn't believe he's the guy who can deliver. That's not just a blow to Sanders' confidence, it's a gut punch to a fan base that's been begging to see him take control of this offense. So what does it mean for Shedeur and the Browns? If the head coach doesn't believe in a quarterback's ability to lead, it plants doubt about that player's future with the franchise. And if that doubt grows, it could mean a major shift ahead for both Shedeur and the organization. All signs started pointing to one reality: Kevin Stefanski was actively working to kill Shedeur Sanders' momentum. Reports even suggested that Stefanski was the one behind the narrative that Shedeur was injured, a claim many believed was flat out false. That's when Stephen A. Smith stepped in and decided he wasn't going to let it slide. He called Stfansky out directly, accusing him of fabricating the Shedeur Sanders is injured storyline. Stephen A. insisted this wasn't about protecting a young QB. It was about creating an excuse to keep him benched without sparking an uproar from fans. The sudden talk of an oblique injury came out of nowhere, and Stephen A. didn't buy a single word of it. He said it was nothing more than a smokescreen, a carefully designed cover to keep Sanders hidden at the bottom of the depth chart. Stephen A. pointed right at that depth chart as proof, calling it the smoking gun. He said it reveals the truth. The Browns never intended to let Shedeur rise. If he had been given the chance to build on his standout debut, there would have been no way to justify pushing him aside. Instead, just when the roster decisions were coming up, the injury story magically appeared. Perfect timing to move him out of the spotlight without triggering full-blown backlash.
And that comes with going up against competition. Of course, second and third units and all of that stuff come into play. When you're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, had he shown up this weekend and balled out again, playing 45 or more snaps like he did in the first game and putting up similar, if not better numbers, I think that would have boded very, very well for him.
But that entire plan collapsed. Gabriel's outing was the opposite of heroic. He struggled from the opening snap to the final whistle, never reaching the end zone or generating any meaningful momentum. Even with the full support of the first-team defense on his side, the only things people remembered were his mistakes. No touchdowns, no highlight throws, nothing that suggested he was even close to ready for the spotlight. And what confused people even more was his attitude after the game, acting like everything was still under control. Dillon Gabriel's situation had gotten so shaky that even Kevin Stefanski couldn't avoid addressing it publicly ahead of the game. He began with the usual message that the Browns were in a solid place overall, but he quickly had to deal with the obvious issue, Gabriel's ongoing struggles. Stfansky openly acknowledged that Gabriel was responsible for 2 critical turnovers, both coming from his own poor decisions. Those errors completely derailed the Browns' momentum and disrupted the flow of the entire game.
2 giveaways really were the difference there in that first half, because I thought we were doing some really good things, but then we got that takeaway, had a takeaway negated by an offside.
Kevin Stefanski has finally admitted that holding Shedeur Sanders back was a mistake, and that kind of admission changes everything. For weeks, he insisted Sanders wasn't ready, hiding behind excuses about development, and even pushing that injury narrative Stephen A. called out as a blatant smokescreen. But after watching Dillon Gabriel fold under pressure, failing to finish drives, and turning the ball over at key moments, Stefanski had no choice but to acknowledge that his approach may have been wrong. By refusing to play Shedeur, he didn't just limit the rookie's growth, he robbed the team of the spark and energy Sanders clearly brings. The turning point came when Gabriel's flaws could no longer be covered up. Fans saw it, analysts saw it, and eventually even Stefanski had to face the reality. His decision to keep rolling with Gabriel in hopes of turning him into the team's leader completely backfired, leaving one undeniable truth: Shedeur Sanders deserves his opportunity. The young quarterback has already shown poise, accuracy, and leadership, qualities Gabriel simply hasn't matched. For Stfansky, realizing that isn't just about correcting strategy, it's also about repairing trust with the fan base. Now the real question becomes, what happens next? Does Stfansky finally let Sanders step into the spotlight and prove what he can do? Or does he risk losing the support of fans by sticking with a narrative that clearly no longer works? The reality is simple. Shedeur Sanders has earned this chance, and delaying it any longer only damages the organization. Stfansky has finally recognized his misstep. The next move will determine whether he fixes it or repeats it. But we want to know what you think. Is Kevin Stefanski really owning up to his mistake in holding Shedeur back? Or is this just damage control now that Dillon Gabriel's struggles are impossible to hide? Do you believe Stfansky is genuinely ready to give Shedeur a fair chance? Or is he still trying to control the narrative behind the scenes? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. We want to hear your take on all of it.